All right, guys, we got to talk about this. This chart's been doing the rounds lately, and everybody's just making a big deal out of this, and they're interpreting it completely the wrong way. And I'm especially annoyed by this guy here. He's being all smarty pants about it, and in one breath he says, "Oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen," and then the next breath he says, "Oh, I know nothing. Don't whatever." Listen, this guy's just an attention, you know what, HOE. So don't listen to him. He's just blabbing on about whatever's popular in the moment. So let's watch 2 seconds of what he's saying, and then I'm going to explain to you why this is completely wrong.
So if you go and look at when rate hikes end, here's a chart of when rate hikes end. More consistently than not, when the Fed pivots and stops increasing rate hikes, that's when the market really crashes.
Okay, first of all, what is a pivot? And then this time is different, okay, guys? This time is different. I know this is the most famous, the most dangerous saying in the world of finance, but it truly is. This time, it truly is different, because the reason, I vaguely remember these earlier things, but I remember 2007 very well. I was there. I lived through it. I worked through it, and I know exactly what's going on. So let's look at 2007. I think this is 2007 one. And this thing was actually popularized by this guy here, Alessio Rastani. He was the first one to kind of start talking about this. And here he actually puts the dates. Okay, so 07 and 2000. Now this was the .com crash. So why did they start to pivot? Because of the crash. The pivot happened after, because they were trying to salvage a crisis situation. Okay, so it's not that the pivot itself caused the market crash. No, it was the other way around. Market crash caused the pivot. Okay, whereas what we have, and then 2007 again, that mortgage-backed security crisis that happened. You guys all know about that crisis that happened, and that crashed everything. And that's why the Fed pivoted as a response. Now the pivot is not going to be as a response to a crisis. It's going to be a response to the end of the crisis. That's the big difference here. I don't know why everybody's being so stupid about this, but let's have a look at this. First of all, what is the definition of a pivot? Just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So let's just take this definition from Investopedia. So Fed pivot, and why does it matter? It says here, it is Fed pivot typically happens when the economic conditions have fundamentally changed in such a way that the Fed can no longer continue its prior policy stance, and it means that it changes course from expansionary loose to contractionary tight. Okay, whereas what's actually going to happen now, we're actually tightening, and then we're going to loosen up. Whereas previously, those pivots in the other side there, they were loosening, whereas this goes from loose to tight. Pivot could be either way, right? Pivot could be left, right, could be right to left. But generally what it means is loosening. All those crises, they were loosening. But now what's going to happen, they're going to just stop the tightening. That's going to be considered the pivot. Okay, so this rate hike cycle was caused by one thing, and that is inflation. Okay, and because inflation happened, they had to start hiking rates so they could contract the money supply, because they were flooding the system with money after the COVID crash and everything happened. And obviously the inevitable consequence is going to be inflation. Obviously we have the problems with supply as well in China due to their zero COVID policy, and also we have the war in Ukraine with Russia, and that is obviously causing a problem with energy markets. So obviously we had this huge inflation, so they had to pull some of the money back, destroy some of the demand, so that then the demand and supply can get back into balance, and the prices would stop rising so much. So that's what they did. Okay, so they went from, so that was the crisis, and then the pivot happened. Okay, and once the thing that's going to happen now, when they stop contracting the money supply, that's not going to be, that's going to be the end of the crisis, not the beginning of the crisis. So they've got this thing arseways. They got this backwards, the wrong way around. In 2007, the market crashed, then Fed intervened, and then they started reducing interest rates. Okay, whereas now they're going to be reducing interest rates because the thing is, the inflation is going to stabilize. Okay, and then obviously inflation and tightening, that could cause some, obviously that is going to cause stress on the economy. That's the whole point of it. But the Fed has a dual mandate, and people seem to be forgetting this. They want full employment, and they want stable inflation. Okay, so they want to have inflation target of 2%, plus they want stable employment. Currently, it's out of whack. We have too much inflation and too much employment. Okay, so they're going to attack the inflation. They're going to reduce employment by a little bit, but they want to do it just slightly. They don't want to completely destroy employment. Okay, they don't want to cause massive unemployment and recession. They may just want to cause some contraction in the demand. And they're getting there already. So they just need to go. Obviously, if they just stopped raising rates immediately, that wouldn't be beneficial, because that would cause the markets to rally too much. So they're going to slowly taper down. So they're going to go from 75 basis points to 50 to 25. Then they're going to hold it there. I don't think they're going to go negative anytime soon, because they're going to have to wait and see what the effects are going to be, because they lag by around 6 months. And obviously, we have the zero COVID, and we have war in Ukraine, because there's nothing Fed can do about those other two things. But they do want to be careful. Like, let's not forget the way they were talking about initially. They were all going about, okay, soft landing, we're going to let the inflation run hot for a little while, transitory, etc., etc. The whole point of it was not to cause a recession. And they don't want to cause recession now. They still want to get that mythical soft landing. So there's absolutely no reason for them to continue hiking rates for too long, because we are already seeing first effects on the economy. And it makes a lot of sense to stop here, wait for a couple of months, and then see which way things go. So this pivot that everybody's talking about is going to be just stopping of raising of rates. It's not going to be even reversing them. Or it's just going to slow down the raising of rates. So this what's going to happen now isn't the typical pivot. A typical pivot is that inflection point from raising rates, or maybe stable rates, to dropping them. That's what happened in 2007. And there was an aggressive drop of rates, just like it was during the COVID crash. It was an aggressive drop of rates. It was a huge, massive intervention in the markets, printing money, quantitative easing, everything all of a sudden, all at once. Whereas what's going to happen now is completely different. We already are in a crisis, and we're trying to get out of a crisis by raising rates. Even though everybody thought that the markets couldn't handle high rates, it looks like everybody was wrong, because we're already at 3%. We're aiming between 4 and 5%. And, things just refuse to break. Apparently, there's enough money in the system floating around, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise, considering how much money printing happened over the last decade or so, since the great financial crisis. So, these guys, we've seen with FTX and how little research they do into companies they recommend. Where's that mouse gone? So you should not be listening to guys like this, who just want sensationalist headlines, and then on the one hand they act super confident, they know exactly what's going to happen, but then tell, hey, don't sue me, bro, I don't know what I'm talking about. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't hear that second part. I see a lot of people in my chat group listening to this guy and thinking he knows what the hell he's talking about. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't care what he's talking about. The only thing he cares about is clicks and engagement. That's all he cares about. He's just blabbing on about bullshit. And this guy, Alessio, I thought he was a bit smarter. But again, look at his subscriber number. It's big. So he knows what he's doing. He knows how to get attention. He knows how to create FUD, and he's in business of attention. That's what his business is, and he's just taking these situations to drum up unnecessary FUD, drama, whatever you want to call it. So I would just warn everybody against this. This chart is just pure stupidity. It has absolutely nothing to do with what's happening right now. This time is absolutely 100% different. It's not the same. So once the Fed quotation mark pivots, it's not going to be a pivot like a usual pivot. It's just going to be stopping of interest rate hikes. So we had a crisis. Pivot was the response to the crisis. If you look at the the charts of the S&P 500, let's just go here to CNBC. And let's go to, let's say, NASDAQ. Probably would be the most obvious example of what's going on. And if we go over to like 1 year, like we've already been dropping, and then what this pivot is going to drop it even more. It doesn't make any sense. We've already been dropping for a long time. So if we go out to 5 years, you see this started about a year ago, October 31st. So Halloween was the top, and then it's just been going down since then. So if we do pivot now, it's not going to look anything like these charts. This was literally just before. I don't know what these time frames are, but I assume these are months. Pretty sure they're not years. So you already see that it was like pivot would be starting here, this is what's going to happen now. We are going to start to reverse. Okay, so it's I mean, I don't expect it's going to be a fast reverse like this, but it could be. But we should at least stabilize. We should go sideways a little bit, and then once the war in Ukraine is sorted, and once the zero COVID stops, then we're going to start seeing this part. So we dropped. I would expect us to just kind of hover around a little bit, hopefully, because we don't want to go straight back up, because then Fed's going to have to tighten more. But it's just going to hover around a little bit, and then once the other two things are resolved, it's going to go back up. Yeah, I mean, this thing stuff makes absolutely zero sense to me, because right now it's a completely different situation. You know, it's the pivot was the response is the pivot already happened. We went from zero to raising. That was the pivot. Now we're just going to pause, or we're going to reduce the increase in rates. It's not a pivot. Like, I don't know what the hell are these people are talking about. It's a completely different thing. And then if Fed causes a crisis, that's going to be a second pivot. So the first pivot already happened. And if there is a crisis, which we don't know there's going to be, then that's going to be a second pivot. And then you're going to see a situation like this. Okay? So let's say we had this, and we pause and we go back up, and then, you know, something breaks, and then Fed's going to pivot again here. Like, they're going to start to lower the rates. I don't know. I hope I haven't gone on too long and made it too weird and too convoluted, but just this chart annoys me, and this guy annoys me even more. And then when I saw this guy talk about this chart, trying to be all smart about it, I said, no, I just have to make a video about it. Just for the record. I know nobody's probably going to see this, but just for the record, so I can say I told you so. All right. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.